It's time for iTVLK lessons in collaboration with the Department of Education Central Province.
Good morning, all of you. Welcome to the session on short fictions and extracts, which is an introduction to prose, specifically short fiction. This is Mohan Ediriweera. You're with iTVLK educational channel. In literature, basically, there are 4 types of genres, or in other words, types. What are they? Okay, in your anthology, you get prose, fiction, drama, and poetry. My dear children, today's lesson aims at making you aware of prose. Okay, my dear children. Now, I have selected 2 definitions presented by 2 of the leading scholars in the world. In fact, both are writers. Now, let's see what is meant by short story. According to Edgar Allan Poe, short story can be defined as something like this. It should be read in one sitting, anywhere from half hour to 2 hours. According to Lori Moore, a short story is a photograph, a novel is a film. So you can see by going through these 2 definitions, the time span that a short story covers when compared with a novel is short. That is why we always consider the fact that it should be brief. We call it brevity. Okay. Now, let's pay our attention to the characteristics of a short story in detail. One sitting reading. We saw that, right? One central issue. This is also very significant. You know, I told you that it covers a short time period. So it can't cover many issues. So it has basically one central issue, and it is very concentrated. In fact, concentration is the key to a short story. Having said that, I don't mean that there are longer short stories. There are, but basically, short stories are short. They are more symbolic. Because they are short, the meaning has to be, got with great care. In the sense, you have to dig deep into the story. And it focuses on one aspect of the character. Commonplace objects obtain immense density. What do you mean by that? That means, in a novel, sometimes the writer may not describe a particular object in detail. Right? Here, short story also, writer may not describe a particular object in detail, but the writer of a novel has more freedom to do so. Right? But in a short story, the writer does not have that freedom. So it emphasizes tone and imagery also. So tone is actually tone shows the attitude of the writer, right? So the writers use imagery, right? A very good medium to talk about isolation. So you know that the genre, right? So what is meant by genre? Genre is type, right? Here it is a short story. So it is a very good medium to talk about isolation. That is why even a trivial detail has a lot of meaning, right? So you have to dig deep into a short story in order to understand it better. Maybe when you read it once, you may not get that particular idea, but when you read again, you will be able to get more out of it. Now, let's pay our attention to the plot. Here, I want to emphasize that there is a difference between a plot and a story. It is one of the basic elements of a literary text. Plot is one of the basic elements of a literary text. It is different from the story. Story is basically the chronological order of the events. Plot emphasizes more on causality. Actually, it pays attention to why rather than what. Why did a series of events take place? How did one event lead on to another? For example, once there lived a king. He had a queen. One day, the queen died and the king died. It is a story. But look at the second one. Once there lived a king. He had a queen. One day, the queen died and the king died because of the grief. Now you can see there is a reason, there's a cause for the death of the king. What is it, my dear children? Can you guess? Actually, you can understand that by now, isn't it? Right? So it is the grief, right? The because the queen has died, right? Now you can see one thing has led on to another. The death of the queen has led to the death of the king. In fact, a plot often zigzagged backwards and forward in time in a less predictable way with the use of techniques such as flashback and flash forward. So you know that when the writer wants to go back the memory lane, he or she uses flashbacks. And when the writer wants to go into the future, he or she uses flash forward. Okay, now I would like you to pay your attention to the elements of a plot, right? So basically, you can identify a plot in terms of exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. Actually, what happens uh, at the exposition, right? So characters are introduced, scene is set, right? So you can see my example here. In fact, this is a very popular children's story, right? Now look at this. Once there lived three pigs. I have introduced you into the characters once, right? Then up to the climax, some actions are taking place. So that is why I have stopped with three dots here. They lived happily. One day a wolf came and many incidents takes place. Now there is a conflict and it is climaxing at the moment. So at a particular point, it comes to a climax, right? So it is the most decisive moment of the story, right? So here you can see jumped down the chimney, right? So, after that, the falling action, right? The wolf fell into the boiling pot of water, and finally, resolution. The wolf was killed and the pigs lived happily ever after. In fact, my dear children, not all the stories end on a happy note, right? It can be different. Now it is time for you to see whether you have got what I have told you so far. Now look at the question. Identify the element of the plot given in the following extract. And I want you to give your reasons also. Shall we read it together? Okay, right. Once upon a time, there were 3 bears. There was a daddy bear who was very big, a mama bear who was middle-sized, and a baby bear who was very small. They all lived together in a little cottage in the middle of the woods. Their favorite breakfast was porridge. One morning, after they made their porridge, Daddy Bear said, "Let's go for a walk in the woods until it cools." Mama Bear and Baby Bear liked the idea, so off they went. While they were away, a little girl named Goldilocks came walking through the forest and smelled the porridge. I'm sure most of you have read this story, right? Can you understand? Actually, can you guess or can you tell me what is this particular element of the plot? Now you can see characters are introduced, right? And scene is set. In fact, here the protagonist is introduced. Protagonist in the sense the main character, right? Yes, it is the exposition. Okay, great. Right. Now, I told you about setting. Now I want you to pay your attention in detail to a setting of a story. Now you can see some pictures, right? Uh, I think you can see the uh, differences between those pictures, right? One is a sunny morning, maybe nighttime, village area, okay, coastal area, and city area, right? So now I want you to pay your attention to the given facts, right? In a setting, you get time. Actually, time gives an idea of when the story is happening. Okay, it can be during the Industrial Revolution, or it can be, uh, pre or during or post war situation, right? It can be a pandemic situation like this, right? It can be any time of the day, maybe morning, noon, afternoon, evening, night, like that. So place is also very significant here. Now, place basically can be identified in terms of geographical location as well as physical location. So geographical location means where the actions or the events take place. As I told you, whether it is a coastal area or a mountainous area, right? So whether it is the dry zone or snowy uh, city, right? Something like that. And physical location, whether the story takes place inside or outside the building, and also social conditions can be identified. For example, is the setting authentic? What is meant by authentic here? Dear children, you know, for instance, okay, let's take a story where you get uh, Sinhala or Sinhalese proper nouns, in the sense names of individuals like Piyada, Sir, and Manika, or somebody like that, right? Or um, you know names of villages, cities like Kandy, Colombo, like that, right? Now, when you uh, get that setting, when you see that setting, you know that the action of the story, right, take place in Sri Lanka. right? It is not in England. It is not in, India even, right? So also weather conditions are very significant also, right? Now look at this: windy, rainy, misty, snowy. Yes. Now, my dear children, why am I emphasizing the significance of this setting to you? Actually, you know, suppose a story is set, right, presenting the readers a very gloomy situation. The writer might be predicting that something, disastrous, unfortunate is going to happen uh, in the story, right? So that is why it is very important, right? Okay, now time for you, right? Now I know you know it, right? Try to identify the different settings shown in the following photos. Okay, now I have presented you 3 photos, right? First one, yes, first one is a rainy day. Okay, you can see it is a city, and next one is also a city, but not okay, maybe in Sri Lanka or India, Bangladesh, maybe, right? You can see the huge American flag behind the person, and it is snowing here, right? And look at the third one. You can see some tribal people here. It's a sunny day. Now, you might be wondering, why am I presenting you these pictures? Because what you do in a prose is not uh, going through these pictures. Dear children, now these sort of pictures are created in our minds by the writer with the use of his or her language. This is the most important thing. Now, though we see letters, words, sentences in a text, these sort of images are created in our minds. So that is why the writer's task is very, very significant, right? Now, in a prose passage or short story specifically, as I mentioned earlier, there are sort of characters. I mean, we use special terms for them, right? Protagonist, antagonist, there are flat characters, round character, static character, dynamic character, like that. Now, let's have a brief look at them, right? Protagonist is the character that the story is woven around. It is the main character of the story. Antagonist is the character which acts against the protagonist, right? Minor characters. Basically, a minor character supports uh, and highlights the main character. Okay, actually, the role of minor characters, right, is very important. They highlight the main character or the protagonist, right? There are static characters. Such a character remains the same throughout the story. For example, if the character is introduced to the readers as a good person throughout the story, the character remains the same. There are flat characters. The flat characters are also similar to that. So character remains one-dimensional throughout the time span of the story. That is, the character is introduced to the readers as a good character. Throughout the story, it remains the same, right? And dynamic characters, right? The character that changes in some significant way, right? There are three-dimensional characters, right? Those type of characters show the good and the bad qualities as well. In fact, these are the real characters, because we all know that nobody is perfect, right? Nobody is perfect, right? We all have good side of us as well as bad side of us, right? So we are in between, right? So the real characters are dynamic and round. Okay, now it is time for you to check your understanding again. What type of a character is Nimal in the given extract? Now look at this. Shall we read it together? Okay. Nimal is a good boy. He never tells lies. He never tells lies. He helps everyone. He respects the elders. He always goes to temple and observes Ceylon poetics. Can you see any bad quality of the person? Can you see any bad quality of the person? Right? Now, what type of character is Nimal here? Right? See, it remains the same throughout the story, and it remains one dimensional throughout the story. Character is introduced to readers as good character throughout the story. It remains the same, right? So this is very important for you to understand, right? Now there's a special, not a special term actually. Well, now we have to pay our attention to the character development, right? How the characters are developed, uh, you know with the story, right? With the progress of the story, right? There are two types of developments. One is the vertical development, the other one is the horizontal development. Actually, whether a particular character changes positively or negatively or remains on the same plane, this is the logic behind this, right? So suppose that there is a man, actually we are introduced to the story uh, where there is a man, no, I mean, let's say, who lives a normal life. One day he goes and wins a lottery. No, so you know what would happen? He becomes rich, right? He buys, big houses, big cars, like that, right? Okay, vice versa also can happen. Vice versa in the sense the other way. There is a man. One day he meets with an accident. What would happen? Most of his dreams would shatter. He would become poor. He would lose his job. So it is sort of downward development, right? So you can see in that particular, in those two particular stories, we saw vertical development of characters. And in some stories, character, remains on the same plane. I mean, we are introduced to a particular person, who possesses particular characteristics throughout the story until the very end of the story. He might be the same person, right? So you have to understand these things. Now, under characterization, let's see what we have to deal with. The strategies that the writer has used to present a particular character to his or her readers. The information that the writer provides to his or her readers. That is, physical appearance, the way that a particular character thinks, the type of activities that a character does, likewise, right? And the techniques a writer uses to create and build characters can be, their actions and speech, what other characters say about them, or how they react to them, what the author writes directly or through a narrator. Right. Now, can you remember I told you about the minor characters? Right. For example, suppose that there is a character, the writer wants to paint a, very positive image of the character. So we are introduced to the character as such, right? So how do we know that this particular character is a good character, or that particular character has good qualities or good attitudes? So we have to compare that particular character with another character. Now in this particular, moment, if we encounter another character who is opposite to the character that I told you earlier, we compare and contrast, isn't it? That character with the other character, right? So then we know this character is good because that character is bad. For example, okay, suppose we all know that peacock is a very beautiful bird, right? We love to watch they dance, right? But suppose that in this world, right, there are only peacocks. Will we get that same satisfaction, right? It would be very general thing, right? There is nothing special, right? It is like that, right? So the role of minor characters, they are very actually the role of minor characters, the roles of minor characters are very significant, right? Now let's pay our attention to themes, issues, and motives. I'm pretty sure that you are aware of themes. Sometimes children, uh, you know, get confused when they see a particular incident or a situation, uh, assuming that it is a theme, right? And I will be teaching you what motives are also, right? First of all, theme can be identified as the overriding or dominant idea in a story. That is a universal statement about humanity. In your anthology, you get love, right? Humor, uh, uh, what else? Uh, nature, like that. Okay, the theme is the central meaning in a piece of writing, and the message, right? I'm emphasizing on that. The message that the author wishes the audience to understand and take away. Right? The message about life or human nature, that is the focus of a story. A theme can typically be stated in one or two words. Right? What is an issue? Actually, an issue is a particular incident, right, or situation in a story which is not a dominant or uh, and central idea. Okay, a motive, it is a recurrent and conspicuous thematic event. Now it can be defined as something repeated. It might be it might be symbols, colors, patterns, speech, character actions, images, or situations that occur more than once throughout the course of a work, right? And it is an element or idea that is repeated throughout a story. A motif can be expressed by a group of related symbols also. So when we go through your stories, please try to identify these uh, themes, issues, and motifs, and see uh, how they have contributed the writer uh, in conveying his or her message. Okay, now it is time for you to check your knowledge again. Now I have selected a poem. You might wonder, why have I selected the poem uh, while discussing about prose? right? So, I mean, it is okay, right? It is also literary text. Right? Now, I want you to identify the main theme, issues, and motives in the given poem, right? So, you can do it leisurely, right? And now you can see the title of the poem, first of all. The Earth Speaks. Can you guess the main theme of this particular poem? Yes. So it might be, most probably, the nature, right? So like that, you should be able to, you know, understand the themes, issues, and motives in a given literary text, right? If you go through them thoroughly, in the sense, if you are able to dig deep into the prose passages, you will definitely be able to understand that. Hope to meet you in another session with more details.
Thank you for watching iTVLK. Innovate, inform, impact.